Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, August 8th, 2017. We hope all things are thumbs up at the moment. More struggles getting the system started today, but I'll tell you what, Tom, you're a good teacher. Arliss, thank you for your help. I think you guys have gotten me to the point where I can diagnose my own problems. I just have to start early enough to make sure that if I'm having them, I can, my usual solution is kill the patient and get a new one, essentially. Shut down and restart. But we're getting closer to that delicate balance, finding that one procedure that works almost every time. And, of course, we'll be deploying some new equipment here shortly that I hope will rectify the problems. Thankfully, they haven't gotten in the way too much of our getting the show out. But, we're at work constantly for ways to improve the show. Thanks, by the way, to Tom for putting together some new graphics that will help launch a couple of new initiatives. You might have seen them on the Morning Post this morning. Thank you again for updating. All we had to do here at this point was remember that Daily Kos itself has had new graphics deployed for, 16 years or something close to that. And we finally remembered, and we got a good reminder, thanks very much to eagle-eyed listeners who also knew it was time to chime in and say, yeah, you got to update your graphics. You have the old font on your logo. Thank you, Tom, for updating those things. And thank you also to those of you who have been making terrific suggestions about ways to pick up a couple dollars here and there, perhaps with some T-shirt sales or other merchandise, but that would require, of course, having an up-to-date logo. And so getting things started began there. Thanks very much. And by the way, those of you who might be interested in either, I suppose, submitting some designs. I have no formal process, of course, for what the hell we're going to do or how the hell we're going to do it. But what's new about that? That's the way we run the show, and that's the way we'll run the merchandising, too. I feel bad about even having to have merchandising, of course, but look, that's reality. Of course, I could just hang it all up. I woke up to the news this morning via Twitter that the good folks, who some of you don't think are such good folks necessarily, over at the Young Turks Network, I met Cenk once or twice, and he seemed like an amicable enough guy, but, we didn't go in depth about anything. We met, I think, in the Chicago, the last yearly coast. So we're talking about 10 years ago now. And, we had some drinks in the bar before they ran out of drinks at the bar in Chicago. You might remember that. Those of you who are already in town for the Atlanta Netroots Nation, enjoy yourselves. Bill, I think, is down there already, which I think I don't know whether I missed his morning tweet or he just wasn't able to do it, whether he was en route to Atlanta or already hung over in Atlanta. I'm not sure, but I hope things are going well down there. It occurs to me it's been a long, long time since I've been to Netroots Nation. I miss it, but I've made zero plans for dealing with it. Anyway, let me get back to the main story at hand just from the morning thing. I do miss you folks, though. That's preoccupying me. I hope you're having a great time. A lot of you haven't gotten down there yet. Of course, the convention doesn't really start until Thursday, but it's become such a fantastic party and such a great atmosphere that a lot of people head down early just to do a little socializing and networking, and, of course, those who are there for business to set up their booths, etc., early in the week. Anyway, I woke up to the news that the Young Turks Network has raised $20 million in venture capital. How do you like that? We, on the other hand, have raised, I think, monthly, we're doing about $750. So eventually, how many years will it take to catch up to the $20 million? Now, taking venture capital means giving up an awful lot of control, and we would never be able to do the kind of show that we did here. We're totally different sorts of, he's been doing it for longer. He's been building the audience. But consider this a backwards appeal to those of you who may be enjoying the show, who might be new to it, to consider dropping by patreon.com, Patreon.com. It's actually a great service in that it is a great way for online supporters of those who, produce all sorts of great stuff. Also, by the way, some crappy stuff, which Patreon has been pretty good about shutting down. We mentioned them some time ago in connection with some of the alt-right weirdos who also keep accounts there. They're supposed to be neutral to what's in there, but they're not entirely neutral. They don't allow racist appeals to remain up there, I guess, much longer than it takes to discover them. But you should visit our patreon.com page, patreon.com/KagroX, K-A-G-R-O-X, because that's me, David Waldman, host of the show, Kagro in the Morning. Long story about how we got the name, in case you're joining us, say, from Rochester, New York, where we welcome you again, and we'll be taking a second stab at giving you those station identification breaks and professionalizing things. Doing our best for it anyway. Justice has been professional on his end. I've yet to find my professional way in and out of these breaks, but we'll get it down eventually. So patreon.com/KagroX is a way for you to offer up some monthly recurring support. You use your credit card. And I know that makes a lot of people nervous using their credit cards online. Fact of life at this point. Going to have to deal with it one way or another. Those of you who prefer to make one-time donations, of course, there's the opportunity to do that through Square Cash, the Square.com, the back-end credit card processor, offers a quickie one-shot donation opportunity. You'll find all of the links to those things in each of our afternoon posts, plus our morning posts, anytime we post on Daily Kos, where you can get the podcast or preview the day's upcoming show. You'll find those links just under our embedded players. Easy way to help keep the show going, and it really is that. We need new equipment from time to time. We'd like to be able to compensate Scott, even just minimally, with some token payment for all the work that he does that we would like to see increased at some point. And of course, I've got the family to support, and we appreciate the support of the 100+ of you who are already monthly donors. One of these days, we really just ought to call down the line. We ought to call you on Skype. We should make you. That's it. We'll change the form. Give us your Skype account, and one day we should do like random surprise calls. Well, who's going to be at the desk to take those? All right, bad idea. Alternatively, send $20 million, please, quickly, for us to grow the show. Now they've got a huge staff, and of course we would hire a huge staff too if we had $20 million. But you gotta hustle to get that kind of money, and we prefer not to hustle. We're very lazy people, but we like to talk about the news. So that's what we'll do. We'll move forward. We have a different kind of show. It's okay. We can live with that. And we appreciate the support and the listenership more so than the support, believe me. We couldn't do this. We wouldn't do this. There would be no point in doing this if you weren't listening to the show. Thank you very much for tuning in, whether live or via the podcast. What's in the news today? I don't know. A little bit of everything. Besides the $20 million, we'll open up Pocket. I should just take a look at, there were some things we didn't get to with Greg's list of stories yesterday. Greg will be back tomorrow. I am betting we won't be able to hear from Joan. Joan will be either en route or, let's say, recovering from a night of socializing, perhaps early in the morning. Pardon me, down in Atlanta on Wednesday. I was going to say, it's been a while since I've been to Netroots Nation, and I think I was kind of thinking I would maybe consider going to the next East Coast Netroots Nation. That would have, of course, been this had I been paying proper attention. A lot of my reluctance actually is the reluctance to give up the opportunity to broadcast a live show during Netroots Nation, but it's the West Coast Netroots Nation. No one's going to be able to hear it. It's too early. The East Coast will be able to hear it, obviously, but I wasn't really, relishing the thought of waking up after those fun nights socializing and doing a effectively 6 a.m. show, which is amazing. It amazes me every day that Justice is able to get it together to come. He doesn't have to get on the air, but still to be at the controls and pushing the buttons. But here we are in Atlanta, or here you are in Atlanta, and I still didn't make it down there. And by the way, next week, as I've mentioned to you, we'll take off for a little family vacation. Already hard at work at trying to put together fun and entertaining shows so as not to leave you in the lurch all the time, at least, while we're away. But guess where I'm going to end up at the far points of my travel. I'll make it as far as Georgia. I really should have. I don't know if the family would have enjoyed the family vacation as much if I said, "Flying out of Atlanta, pick me up when you're halfway done." That's really not going to fly. But anyway, so Georgia, I'm not going to miss out on you entirely. But Atlanta, Hotlanta. Enjoy it. Hope everything goes well. Looking forward to hearing the reports and seeing the pictures of the festivities down there. So what do we got today that we can discuss that has made it into pocket over the last day and a half? Of course, Trump is back rage tweeting. I guess we can now expect that. The weather still a little sour. I don't know if it's raining in New Jersey, but I guess it's a little cloudy, and I don't know. I don't know whether he plans to get out and hit the links or not today. No one knows what he's planning. He's rage tweeting and getting set to apparently have a major briefing. He only used major one time in a row, but he used it twice in the same sentence. He tweeted this morning out of nowhere and without the knowledge, apparently, of any of his staff, that he was going to be having a major, what did he say? Briefing. Giving a major briefing on the opioids crisis, which is certainly a good topic to give a briefing on if you're president of the United States and they're a country with a major opioid problem, which is all true. He says he's going to be holding a major briefing, and guess why? The staff knows nothing about it. How they're going to prepare him for the briefing, I have no idea. They're likely not going to prepare him for the briefing very well, but it doesn't matter. You know, he just comes out and says, the whole thing is terrible. We're in bad shape. It's a sea of drugs. What did they say about New Hampshire? A den of, I don't know. Anyway, if you're wondering how he got around to it without, informing his staff that he was going to be doing that, the answer comes from John Harwood. Let me pull up his tweet and of course his bio so I can tell you who they are in case you didn't know. I didn't know, covers Washington, the economy and national politics for CNBC. So John Harwood lets us know that after the Donald told us that I will be holding a major briefing on the opioid crisis, which he capitalizes by the opioids capitalized, crisis is not. On the opioid crisis, a major problem for our country. That's the second major in a one-sentence tweet. Today at 3 p.m. in, of course, fabulous Bedminster, New Jersey, which he calls the summer White House. Hunter noting for us quite humorously yesterday that when he drives orders the White House limo through the nearest McDonald's, he declares it the lunchtime White House. That's pretty much the size of things there. But John Harwood reports that the president tweeted this announcement of his 3 p.m. major briefing on the opioid crisis 18 full minutes after retweeting a Fox and Friends story on opioids. That's how he found out there was an opioid problem, or was reminded. I know he's mentioned it before. That's the way he works. I'll be curious to see what he can come up with. Maybe he knew that they had such information compiled already and he's been too lazy to schedule a briefing. But then he saw Fox and Friends. And it's interesting. I mean, I guess with a competent president with a sound mind and real policy chops, I would kind of enjoy that sort of responsiveness. If you're watching television and you see that there's a crisis, you would want your president to get on the air and address it really soon. Although I don't know that opioids is the kind of crisis that demands 3 p.m. response. North Korea launches a missile and say, hits the United States. Well, then I would say let's have a 9 a.m. briefing. But, if you could believe in the guy and you thought he could do anything about it, and apparently there's still millions of people who believe that that's the case. They're crazy, and they don't know the difference between an effective president and an ineffective one, but they believe that he's that he's being responsive. And I guess they're being maybe this is more of a play for the base. I mean, obviously it's supposed to be. I don't think he really gives a crap about the people who are on are addicted to opioids, but he knows that that's a problem that's out there. He's probably been told, yeah, by the way, most of your voters live in areas that are hard hit by opioids. But I think what's really motivating him here is most of your voters watch Fox News and therefore Fox and Friends, and therefore they see the segment on opioids, and therefore they believe there is a crisis in opioids, and they're not wrong about that. The fact that there is one. How they approach it, I have no idea, because I'd never watched that crap. But your voters are seeing it. They are, therefore, of the belief that there is a crisis, and then their president, in whom they still believe, I think, to get all the grammar correct, immediately says, I'm on it. That's got to be pretty impressive. So it's a play for the base, probably in that sense, leaving aside whether or not there's a genuine crisis, whether he has a genuine solution to it, whether he really cares about the people who are on it. It's I guess the optics of it are good, to use a phrase that we hate to resort to. Anyway, that's what was going on with his tweeting this morning. There's a couple of other things that I took note of. Including, yesterday, of course, we learned that he became angry about Senator Blumenthal again because he had seen the senator on TV. Remember all the meetings and calls he's busy with? He's not having a vacation. Watching hours and hours of TV, of course, not a disruption for him. I did see Daniel Dale tweeting this morning as well. Every time I watch Fox and Friends, I am re-amazed that the president spends hours watching Fox and Friends. I'll take your word for it, of course, because there's no chance I'm ever going to watch Fox and Friends, but I get a pretty good sense from the Twitter feed about what's going on each morning with that and how it moves the president. Our good friend Lisa from down in Tennessee, who tweets as L-I-T-Z-Z, Litz, as the best I can give a pronunciation to it, L-I-T-Z-Z 11. It's difficult. Sometimes you got to give those handles so people can find Lisa here. But Lisa keeps us up to date on the gun happenings and much more in Tennessee. And I noticed that she picked up last night that Blumenthal and Richard Blumenthal were currently the top two trending topics with Russian bots, noting how weird how that works, isn't it? And it is, and we've got some news about the bots. We only barely mentioned it yesterday, but bots were big news over the weekend. Let's see, other things that caught my attention. By the way, figure out what caught my attention any given morning. This is how short my attention span is. I have to reread my own Twitter feed. What did I think was interesting this morning? If I don't park it in Pocket, there's just no record of what goes through my head between 7 and 9. And then I blank out as soon as our music starts. Whew. All right, let's see. Yes, another fascinating story that we could probably spend days and days on, picked up on by Matthew Miller. Let's open that one up and just at least get it on the record. Matthew Miller, MSNBC Justice and Security Analyst, by the way, formerly at Department of Justice under the Obama administration and the DSCC as well. One of the main reasons Sessions is at the DOJ, Jeff Sessions, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, of course, our Attorney General. One of the main reasons he's at the DOJ, to help states purge voters from the rolls. That's his actual job, yes. Disgusting position for the department to take, but familiar. Again, he is retweeting the tweet. Let's open that one up too. Let's give every one of these tweets its due. Justin Levitt tweeting this one, and if we can open it up and get Justin's, is this? Oh, I'll see. Okay. It's a screen cap of Justin's tweet. So in order to get the full view of things and see if there was a thread behind it, we have to open things up here. Another former DOJ staffer and a former National Voter Protection Director. And his tweet, let's see, now I have to back up and scroll down and find it again. DOJ flips again. That's his comment on this screen cap. In a SCOTUS purge case, is what they're flipping on. New brief overrides career attorneys' enforcement history, prior briefs okayed by the Solicitor General. In other words, a reversal of the positions taken by the Department of Justice during the Obama administration. No surprise there. But we'll make a comment or two on that. The clip, the screen grab that he's got here, says in the 15 years since Help America Vote Act's enactment, HAVA, H-A-V-A. In the 15 years since Help America Vote's enactment, the Department of Justice has not taken enforcement action against Ohio or the other states that send Section 2507D2 notices. I know a lot of gibberish there, but based on non-voting. But the department argued that the NVRA, National Voter Registration Act, is that right? We're talking about an interplay here between Help America Vote, NVRA, Motor Voter, and all the voter registration assistance and election assistance, particularly that cropped up following the disaster of the 2000 election. The department argued that the NVRA forbids that practice in a guidance document first issued in 2010 and in two recent amicus filings, including a brief filed in the Court of Appeals in this case. As a matter of fact, I'll leave this one for you to read through because it's a little jargon heavy and a little code heavy. Upshot is that basically, once again, the Department of Justice is taking the position that how shall we put this? The political appointees, the top brass at the Department of Justice, is overruling their career nonpartisan civil service attorneys on pretty much all questions, certainly all questions of voter purging programs taking place in red states that are, of course, designed to purge as many minority voters as possible on the theory that they are Democratic voters, and therefore increase the margins for Republican candidates on their ballots for any office. This is the position that was taken during the hyper-politicization of the George W. Bush Department of Justice as well. We knew that was going on. We uncovered it at the time. We discussed how serious it was that they were doing this stuff. We wrote all about it at Daily Kos and elsewhere. It was a major constitutional crisis of sorts. It didn't really bloom into a full-blown crisis in the same terms that we're seeing today necessarily, but it was at least constitutional hardball in the sense that we've come to understand it, and we've talked about this extensively with Armando. And Armando, by the way, if this gets your goat, you're certainly free to join us in making this a topic for the day. But the way things generally work when it comes to voting rights and voter access and voter protection under the existing laws, all of which have their genesis in the Voting Rights Acts of the 60s and the Civil Rights Acts of the 60s. Of course, they have historical roots well beyond that, but that's the topic for another day. The way it's basically supposed to work. Anytime one of these states wants to undertake a program that limits access to the ballot, or really anytime even when a lot of southern states, when they redistrict after a census, they have to get their redistricting maps approved, or they did anyway for quite a while, get them approved by the Department of Justice. And the law was designed such that the maps were submitted, reviewed by the Department of Justice that had career nonpartisan lawyers looking for evidence of bias that would tilt the odds against minority voters. And if they found such bias, they would recommend to the top brass of the DOJ that they ought to reject those maps and they could forbid them from going into effect. The system was such that when it was designed, that, the assumption was that the top brass would take the guidance of the people who were there as nonpartisan experts. Eventually, that tradition fell by the wayside, died. It was murdered by Republicans dominating the Department of Justice, and finally really done away with during the George W. Bush administration, in which they said, listen, the design of the law is that the top brass is the word that matters here. The courts look to see what did the Department of Justice do writ large. They don't ask questions necessarily about who did what at lower levels in the department. What is the final output of the Department of Justice? This is the prerogative ultimately, of the people to whom we delegate the responsibility of running the department, the Attorney General and his top staff, because they represent the president. And when we wrote these laws, we forgot that we might one day elect an insane president or a dopey president who simply appoints insane people to the jobs, or some combination thereof. We happen to be there at the moment. But under the George W. Bush administration, with a dopey president appointing insane people, they realized, again, that the law was built this way. If the top brass wants to simply overrule the civil servants who are nonpartisan experts in voting rights and voter access issues, and say that despite the fact that all of them unanimously found the map to be discriminatory on its face, that's their prerogative. They can do that. That's the system that we've built for ourselves. But no one would ever dare do such a thing because it would get out that they had simply overruled all the attorneys who were supposed to run this thing and run it in a nonpartisan fashion. And it did get out, and there was outrage, and then there was a little less, and then a little less, and a little less after that. And eventually they realized that the upshot of this decision-making was that the courts would approach lawsuits filed in these cases this way. They would ask, what did the DOJ say? And if the DOJ, no matter how they arrived at the decision, said that those maps were okay with them, that pretty much settled the issue. If the plaintiffs wanted to continue and sue and still claim that the maps were discriminatory, they would have to overcome the court's assumption that everything had been done right based on having gotten the seal of approval from the Department of Justice. Now, we'll continue with this explanation a little further after this, but for right now, one of our famous station breaks. Well, we should be right about back now from our station break. Hopefully everything synced up nicely, and we've gotten to the point where we can do these things automatically, and hopefully we can let Justice snooze during the mornings pretty soon and handle these things all on our own. Amazing technology. Anyway, where we were before the break, if I can, sometimes I'll lose my way through the 3 minutes. That's the only problem with these station breaks. That, of course, and of course live listeners saying, hey, what were you just about to tell me? Where we left off, of course, was having explained that the law was structured such that if the DOJ top brass rejected everything that came up from everybody who knew anything really about fairly and honestly applying voter access laws and still said, this is facially discriminatory according to them, but we say either so what or no, it isn't. The courts are stuck. When you sue to say, sue your state, whatever, sue the Department of Justice if you have to validate the claim that you believe these new districts or this new voter access law, or non-access law really more often than not, is discriminatory, the assumption is that you will have to prove your, basically it's a little bit, I guess it's analogous to charges in criminal court. Instead of having to prove your case at a lower burden of proof, like preponderance of the evidence, and to show that, well, most of the evidence tends to show that these districts are in fact discriminatory. You'll have to instead get up to this higher level of evidence where, analogous to the criminal law where you have to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt in order to convict someone versus in order to indict them and bring them to trial, like show that the preponderance of evidence allows you to make certain assumptions about their activities, and then we'll prove it in court. And if you can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, then fine. It's analogous in that way. Rather than having the opportunity to go to court and lay out the evidence and show that most of the evidence, at least presumably in the eyes of a jury, would be perceived this way. The preponderance of the evidence is such that you should reasonable person should come to the conclusion that this was discriminatory. Instead, you have to overcome a presumed validity of a Department of Justice ruling on this thing and show that there was something wrong with the way the decision was made in the Department of Justice. And that's an extraordinarily difficult thing to do normally when you don't have access to their memos or the deliberative process, or their secret memos to one another in private email systems, or however they communicate with one another, and secretly plot, if that's what they're doing, to take away your voting rights. It's a much more difficult thing to do than to show, well, we know what the districts are, and we know what the history of discrimination has been in this state, and we know that we're supposed to watch out for these things according to the civil rights and voting rights laws that are on the books. But it's not any longer a matter of showing that the lines were drawn for discriminatory purpose. It is first and foremost showing that the Department of Justice cheated and made their decisions in some arbitrary, capricious, or otherwise illegal manner to validate those lines. And then, at that point, you can then, if a court will agree that that has happened, then you get the opportunity to show why you think it's discriminatory for the state to have done what it did. In other words, the Department of Justice very quickly discovered that if they had people in the top levels who were willing to take the PR hit of purposefully overruling their attorneys and approving discriminatory plans, they were pretty much in the clear, unless the plaintiffs could go to court and prove the reason these plans were approved is because these officials in the Department of Justice are racist, and it was always their intent to do this, whether it was fair in their minds or not. You can't proceed with your case. It's a huge barrier. I mean, even though often, we certainly feel like it's obvious to us that that's the case. Proving it to a court is a much different proposition. And so it makes it extraordinarily difficult to enforce the laws as they were intended to be used when the Department of Justice is willing to simply enforce them for the opposite purpose. It was a problem we had in the Department of Justice under George W. Bush, Hans von Spakovsky and his gang, and I can't even remember all the names of Schlosky, another name that rings a bell. There was a whole core of Department of Justice appointees whose job it was to do this last time around. And it went hand in glove with the program of politicizing the U.S. attorney's offices, and I really mean it, hand in glove. Not only is it the same sort of cheating going on, that is to say, violating statutes that are supposed to prevent the overly hyper political appointment of people to all sorts of top jobs in any department, Justice Department included, but especially when it comes to U.S. attorneys. Now, U.S. attorneys are going to be political appointees nonetheless, and we can go back to Armando's arguments about what a farce it is to pretend that they're not appointed with political considerations in mind, just like judges. But still, you're supposed to be a lot more clever and underhanded, essentially, about how you discover such things. Basically, you're supposed to look at somebody's the permissible way. You're not supposed to do this, but the permissible way would be to simply observe somebody's political track record outside of the interview process, and you come to have a pretty decent, understanding of where they come from politically. That's how, and you dive into the lists of political cronies, people who have been either big donors or who are politically active in the states, and those people basically become known to the political operations in those states and therefore to the senators who represent those states. Those suggestions are made to the president. The appointments are made based on those suggestions. Whether they ring true or not is a call for the president's staff to make. Do we trust this senator? Do we trust the people making this recommendation? And it's basically all, under the table, all the politicization is done. What was remarkable about the George W. Bush administration was that wasn't enough for them. Either they didn't trust their networks, or they just didn't trust the people they were appointing to understand what the agenda was without an explicit set of instructions. That's where the problems arose for the George W. Bush administration. In the interview processes for high-level positions, U.S. attorneys included, they just had people who either didn't care or really honestly didn't know that you couldn't say, so are you a super duper Republican? Do you totally love George W. Bush? And are you on board with discriminating against minorities when it comes to voter access? And if you're not, we're not going to make you U.S. attorney. Or if you're already U.S. attorney, we're not going to allow you to continue as U.S. attorney unless you are on board with this program. And more specifically, will agree as U.S. attorney to do your damnedest to bring federal charges against minority voters in your district such that you'll end up with precedent on the books for continuing our program of voter suppression. And if you would agree, yes, I will do that, fantastic, you got the job. If you would not agree to do that, well, also fantastic for us, you're fired and we'll replace you with someone who will do this. It was an enormous problem, and of course it was brought up as an enormous problem, and of course we might as well note at this point that for the most part, mainstream, centrist, both-sider, sympathetic, whatever you want to call them, Democrats at the time were initially in the business of saying, no, they're not doing that. That's crazy. There is no there. The U.S. Attorney's scandal is a whole lot of something made out of nothing. Mountain out of a molehill at best. And we're not even sure there's a molehill there. And now, Josh Marshall, I think, thought differently and pushed very hard. And if I recall correctly, it was Jay Carney in his capacity as White House press secretary at the time, dismissing all of that. Later on, he reversed his position and said, by golly, you're right. And of course, famously so. And, well, that was the big awakening. Too late for mainstream Democrats, at large. Though there were certainly some who were willing to take up the cause early on. It never really became much of a rallying cry. But by the time we discovered what a big problem it was, we were faced with another issue, that is sometimes, a byproduct of going with your centrist, moderate, mainstream type Democrats who are used to dealing with centrist, moderate, mainstream type Republicans and don't really catch on to their true agenda as quickly as we, more sensitive and, yes, generally alarmist progressives. And it's a good we have good reason to be alarmist. You know, we come by it honestly. But they don't often catch on to the tricks Republicans are using as quickly as I think the rest of us do. By the time they caught on to the program, it was time instead to face the next election and take the mainstream milquetoast, don't rock the boat, both-siders, sympathetic position that there was nothing that we could do about it because that was looking backwards and we had to look forward to the future, to direct America. I don't know about you, but this is troublesome, but we're going to fix it in the future and we can't look backward, et cetera, et cetera. On every front. On torture, on detainee policy, on DOJ politicization, on a number of other things. The don't look back, look forward agenda. It was very appealing. And by the way, I mean, it's not wrong in the sense that it garnered the most votes. On the other hand, I will say it ought to be supremely shocking and surprising to our theoretical, who can be nailed as being centrist, milquetoast, middle of the road all the time? I don't know. If anybody really fits that label, it's a label. It's not designed to fit everybody all the time. Shorthand, etc. We're wrong about that on a lot of issues, but it happened across the board on a number of issues, and amazingly, you wonder what do such people think if they still adopt this position about the last election, allegedly anyway, having been quote unquote won. That is to say, it lost in the popular vote, but something happened with the Electoral College. You would think it would be awfully surprising for the don't look backward, look forward to the future crowd to find out that lock her up, the whole thing is look backward, somehow allegedly wins, quote unquote, wins the election. Though once again, we have to point out, millions more people, arguably, voted for the don't look back agenda. So, it's not that it's necessarily a losing agenda. How do you evaluate it? I don't know. It's one of those complex things. And again, you could spend all day, all week, all month and turn it into a Bernie versus Hillary thing and ruin all your progress that way. It's entirely possible. But we still have a major problem to deal with here. We've got a situation where the DOJ is being repoliticized in exactly the same ways all over again. I mean, the exact same pattern with top brass overturning career attorneys. And remember, the group of career attorneys that are going to be there is a badly damaged group already. It was destroyed under George W. Bush. I mean, the exodus from the voting rights section and civil rights division during that politicization was damaging enough. And we only sort of barely recovered during the brief and temporary 8-year reprieve of the Obama administration, only to find another massive exodus on the entry into office of Donald Trump. So I don't even know who's still there fighting, but even though the ranks are diminished, they still managed to almost unanimously reject the latest state plans for voter purges, only to be overruled by the Department of Justice, now in court again, saying we want to take advantage of the same rules that allowed us to do this the first time, that if we are willing to put our names and our stamps on it, the courts simply accept it as valid unless it's shown, unless you can come up with memos that say somewhere that we did this for obviously racist or political reasons, and we're usually pretty good at hiding that. Well, I guess generally speaking, Republicans have to the extent that the George W. Bush administration is a track record, and maybe the Nixon administration is a track record, they actually haven't been all that good at hiding their tracks because they keep getting found out. And this administration is probably worse than any of them they've had. It's the leakiest bunch of idiots you've ever seen, and they don't really know the difference between legal and illegal, nor do they care. They just think they can do whatever they want. Though history is largely on their side. We find these things out usually too late to do anything about it. I mean, what would you think of it? What would be your analysis if you were a wacko conservative in the new Trump administration and you were having the argument about whether or not you ought to do these things? It wouldn't last very long, the argument. But if you were arguing back and forth about whether to do these things, you could argue, you could make the case, well, the people who do this always do get caught. Now, I don't want to get caught. But the counter argument would be, yeah, but they catch you 6 years into an 8-year administration or 3 years into a 4-year administration. And then the Democratic response, generally speaking, is hush, hush. We'll take care of it at the ballot box. We don't look backward. We can't call for prosecutions of these people. We can't call for the impeachment of these people. Things are beginning to change with Donald Trump and impeachment, but not entirely. It's just the rhetoric has heated up, but we don't see much in the way of action at this point, and there's not that much action that can be taken. Of course, we require Republicans to take that action at the moment, and we're not going to get them. But they know, and you could certainly argue, look, when push comes to shove, the Democrats aren't going to have the guts to do anything about this anyway. They're going to say, shh, impeachment's off the table, or prosecutions, that's off the table. We gotta move forward. We gotta do the old, don't look backward agenda. And they might even be right about that. That's the worst part. I don't know how to sort it out except to lay it out for you and, rile you up and perhaps inspire you to write, or for that matter, call or record a segment that we can play here on the Kagro in the Morning Show. Let me remind everybody that we can do that and invite our folks in Rochester to do that, since we cannot yet accommodate you with phone calls. I want to let you know, not only can you reach us during the live show via Twitter. I mean, I know you got to download the app and get smartphone adept. If you're not, that'll be awfully difficult, I admit. But if you are Twitter ready and Twitter savvy, show us what you're thinking about. Make your argument, and it's okay to do it in a series of tweets too. We can read a couple of them if it doesn't fit in 140 characters. If you've got an article that pertains, include it as a link, tweet it to us. Use the hashtag KITM. That's, for those of you not familiar with hashtags, well, get familiar. But the hashtag sign is, of course, the pound sign to those of us who are used to it on the phones rather than online. But hashtag KITM for Kagro in the morning helps it hang up a little longer on my screen so I can help redirect the show in that direction. But another opportunity available to you, and it's a near substitute for phone calls, really, if you think about it. Just turn on the recording device, the recording app on a smartphone, and talk it out. A segment of reasonable length, let's say, in the 5-minute neighborhood even isn't too long. If you can keep it shorter, fantastic. Or if you just got a question, or you just want to call up and say, gosh, I want to give you $20 million like the Young Turks, but I don't know what your address is. Where can I bring the money? Whatever it is. You can record it on your smartphone and email it to me. And you can use my goofy email address, kagrox, Kagrox, at gmail.com to reach me. Send me those files. Record it on your smartphone and whisk it away via email using your smartphone, and provided it's radio friendly and an appropriate topic and something we can play on the air without getting our friends in Rochester in trouble, we will go ahead and do that. And you can not only help direct the show, you can ask your questions directly, or you can redirect the show and say, this is a story that's important to me, and here's why. Include, if you would please, in your email a link to any articles that you use so we can let everybody else read them and evaluate them in their own time, as we do here on the show each day. And that's a great way to get your voice heard. Anyway, so I think we've pretty much exhausted giving the old background on the topic of the DOJ. Just wanted to remind you that this was happening again. We've seen it before, and, it's a little bit frustrating because a lot of people warned the Obama administration, and they knew, I think, at least intellectually, that this was likely to happen, that it really is only a brief reprieve. If you elect Democrats, basically, this is a pretty good lesson in the way Democrats and Republicans work. Republicans, apparently, at least in the last couple decades, will twist and even break that law without hesitation and apparently with impunity every time they capture the White House. And even when they capture the White House and Democrats hold Congress, the oversight, it's better than nothing, but it's not super effective at stopping the executive branch's abuse of their discretion. We give them a lot of leeway. That's the system we've got. So electing Democrats to the executive and to Congress as a solution tends to be temporary unless Democrats were willing to make a part of their outward agenda rooting this stuff out and trying their best to prevent it, either by strengthening the law where we're able to do that, and that's a difficult tightrope to walk. It really is, to get the balance right for discretion that the executive needs to be flexible and work its will once they've won an election, versus preventing abuse. Abuse is usually more creative than outlining a prospective proactive law. I mean, that's just, it's just the way it is. I mean, if you're willing to abuse the law, then you just always are going to have that much more flexibility than trying to prescribe things proactively. But anyway, Republicans tend to return to the same practices and simply return to the same abuse, and Democrats simply offer 4 and 8 year reprieves from that abuse rather than any sort of ultimate cure. I don't know whether that's by design or whether that's just a weakness of the system. Just something to keep in mind about Republicans. They keep returning to those same crimes because they work. They get away with it. They sometimes get found out, but getting away with it ultimately is what ends up happening. And not only do they get away with it, they tend to get away with it a second time. The same people or their proteges tend to come back to continue their work later on. Anyway, so that's certainly of some major interest. Occupied a lot of my time this morning. I had some, it just actually gave me a thought about where we would take this next, but I quickly blanked out on that. Let's take a look at some of the comments that have come in and some other suggestions for directions to go in this morning. Let's see. Where did we leave things off? Okay, here's the morning's comments. Here's Booker's comments. Tweet says, Book Childress. He likes the title Viceroy. Who are we talking about here? Look at this. They're looting the Treasury. CNN panel blasts Trump over plan to hand Afghanistan, I guess, over to private contractors. Is that Eric Prince in the picture? He likes the title Viceroy, says Booker. Surprisingly, he's willing to do that job for the U.S. What a team player. Pointing to the Raw Story entry on, let me just verify. Yeah, that is Eric Prince. My eye is pretty good for recognizing him at this point. And of course, the circumstances of the story made it easy to figure out too. They're looting the Treasury. CNN panel blasts Trump over plan to hand Afghanistan to DeVos's brother. Our education secretary is the sister of Eric Prince of Blackwater infamy. Sarah Burris has this story. During a panel discussion on President Donald Trump's many conflicts of interest, Michael D'Antonio, author of The Truth About Trump, somebody wrote a book, The Truth About Trump. What do you know? Blasted his financial surplus in the wake of his presidency. According to the Financial Times, Blackwater founder Eric Prince, who happens to be Education Secretary Betsy DeVos's brother, has proposed a 2-year plan to supply 5,000 mercenaries and close to 100 aircraft. They're in the Air Force business now, bringing the total cost of the U.S. effort to turn round a failing war to less than $10 billion a year. Gee whiz, thanks for the savings. We're spending too much in Afghanistan, and it's making the insurgency worse through corruption and leakage to the Taliban, the former Navy SEAL explained, adding that the Afghan campaign would cost the U.S. $45 billion this year and $50 billion in 2018. Then there is the Trump Organization. The president has said he's stepped away from to let his sons operate. D'Antonio recalled the press conference where candidate Trump appeared with the table full of file folders. You remember that one? We all knew most of them were empty, he said. We're still waiting for good information about the reality of those properties, so it really does give us lots of pause for concern. There's too many areas of corruption operating at once, a flooding of the zone for us to sort it all out. He brought up what the public response would have been if there was an Obama hotel or a Bush resort. That's clearly true, but no one cares about that anymore. That's standard line. You have to say it every once in a while, but I don't know. Doesn't seem to do much. There would be no end to the criticism of those presidents, D'Antonio continued, and rightfully so. This is why it's so problematic for someone in that highest office to have such far-flung business dealings. Today, we hear that there is contemplation of using a mercenary army in Afghanistan that's owned by his education secretary's brother. Good point. This is getting to the point where it looks like they're looting the presidency for their own gain. The Treasury, I think, is what he means. But the president, I don't know. They're not looting the presidency. The president's looting the presidency. Video of the exchange is included therein. You can watch the whole exchange for yourself. In the meantime, time for us to get ready to go into the next of our short breaks. Not quite yet, but we'll talk our way out of that one. Let's take a look at the other comments that have come in the last couple of minutes here. And there was a follow-up from Booker here. Okay. Oh, it's the same one. It came through twice. How interesting. Well, you were probably having Twitter problems. Let's see. What else have we got here? Some suggestions from Kate Sherrill. That's pretty much linked to the same thing. We should open that one up. How the Trump Hotel has rewritten the rules of business and politics in Washington. Let's open that one up and cross our fingers that there isn't any auto-playing video in it. But you won't hear much of the video anyway, as it's almost time to allow our stations that break for station identification. But we'll return to that one. And I did remember what that other item was, so we can use this short break to write a note about it. Well, we should be about back from our break right around now, if everything is working correctly, and I think it is, and we can continue our discussion of our last article about the looting of the Treasury, at least that being discussed on the CNN panel. A lot of topics brought up in that one, too, not only Afghanistan, but also the continuing emoluments problem posed by the Trump Organization's continuing business and the continuing lack of separation between the president's sons, to whom he supposedly handed over the business, and the president himself. I mean, that's a total farce, and we'll never get back around to that one so long as we have to preoccupy ourselves with so many other crazy scandals like the Russian scandal, which we will get back to. We definitely have something to discuss on that front. But let me first take up this article that Kate Sherrill sent us, How the Trump Hotel Has Rewritten the Rules of Business and Politics in Washington. I think we know how, but let's read the latest thinking, thanks to Jonathan O'Connell in the Washington Post. Ooh, and I love these narrative beginnings to these things. On a June morning, probably a beautiful June morning, it was probably a disgusting, humid mess here in Washington, D.C., but on a June morning, Romanian President Klaus Iohannis, I'm guessing at that one, Iohannis, Iohannis, and his wife enjoyed croissants in the lounge of the opulent hotel a day before joining President Trump a few blocks away at the White House for a Rose Garden news conference. I love Romanianism. They're fantastic. It's wonderful. Rome was awesome. I'm sure it went something like that. Downstairs, that same day in the grand ballroom, hundreds of bankers discussed their industry's future under Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, who lived in the hotel for 6 months at his own expense, according to a spokesman, after Trump picked him for the job. The scenes illustrate a daily spectacle of Washington influence at 1100 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest, the city's newest luxury hotel, and one that has quickly become a kind of White House annex. Back to the original concept of lobbying. They actually have a lobby in this hotel where you can do your lobbying. That's why they call it lobbying. It's amazing how much he's set the clock back. Since Trump's election, Trump International Hotel has emerged as a Republican Party power center where on a good day, such as July 28th, around 8 p.m., for instance, excited visitors can watch the president share intimate dinner conversation with his just-named Chief of Staff, John F. Kelly, and be the first to brag about it on social media. And I do think that's a huge thing for Trump. He really likes to have that stuff leak on social media. He's a page 6 boy through and through. This is nothing Washington has ever seen. For the first time in presidential history, a profit-making venture touts the name of a U.S. president in its gold signage. And every cup of coffee served, every fundraiser scheduled, every filet mignon ordered and destroyed by being overcooked feeds the revenue of the Trump family's private business. In conversations with the Washington Post, the hotel's management described its strategy to capitalize on the president's popularity. They just openly admit it. Like, why not? It markets the hotel to Republican and conservative groups that embrace Trump's politics, but takes care not to solicit business from fringe groups that would embarrass the president. No, they don't. They absolutely market to fringe groups that would embarrass the president. The president just doesn't understand that that should be embarrassing to him. That is to say, what's happening here is, of course, the question, do they market to Nazis? Yes, they do. Do they market to people who like to say things like, I am an avowed Nazi. I want to kill everybody, essentially. I can't wait to just go out there and murder me some minorities in the name of Donald J. Trump. That guy they might not market to. The people who wear Nazi medals on goofy Sergeant Pepper-looking uniforms and somehow don't get fired from the White House no matter what. That kind of person. People who say, I'm not a Nazi, I just want to kill all minorities. But for good reasons. Those guys get the invitations. It's not that they don't market to people who are embarrassing. It's that the president just doesn't get embarrassed. I think that's a finer point on it. But, okay, they can't say it in the Washington Post. That's why you come here. I'll say it. Trump supporters in red Make America Great Again caps get a chance to rub elbows, not really, with White House officials against an American flag backdrop in the Benjamin Bar, where a signature concoction of winter wheat vodka, oysters, and caviar goes for $100. Benjamin? Yeah. That's super classy to call your bar and, the opulent, over-decorated piece of crap hotel's bar, the Benjamin Bar. And that's only because nobody knows what's on the $1,000 bill. Anyway, while we can't quantify how much business we have received because of politics, neither can we quantify how much we have lost. Oh, well, so two sides, you see. Patricia Tang, director of sales and marketing, said in an interview, "It is difficult to see comings and goings at the hotel. There are no signs in the lobby to direct guests to daily events. Velvet ropes block the public from meeting areas, and some groups holding conventions and banquets omit references to Trump's name in their promotional materials. Many declined to answer questions about why they chose the Trump Hotel over the district's many similar luxury venues." The Post spent part of every day in May in the hotel's bars, restaurants, and lobby. What reporters saw ranged from events hosted by foreign groups with policy priorities to Republican glitterati, Rudolph Giuliani posting for selfies at the bar, the night Trump fired FBI Director James Comey, White House aide Omarosa Manigault conferring with the former producer of The Apprentice, former Trump campaign advisor Corey Lewandowski plopping into a black leather chair marked reserved. Then Press Secretary Sean Spicer scrolling through his phone on a plush blue sofa in the lobby. The parade included out-of-town tourists gawking in the lobby, bartenders hawking $2,500 per bottle champagne, as though it were a strip joint, a light artist at nightfall projecting a protest message on the gray stone facade that read, "Pay Trump bribes here." Brilliant form of protest, by the way. Love it. Trump, as titular leader, and I'm sure that makes him laugh, of the Republican Party, and not just because it's difficult for him to imagine himself in that role, has showcased the hotel as a destination of choice for GOP loyalists. In July, about 300 Republican donors paying $35,000 apiece gathered at the hotel for a fundraiser headlined by the president. The event raised an estimated $10 million for Trump's campaign, 4 years away. The Republican National Committee and other GOP, as I like to say, groups. Why give them the dignity of being the GOP? GOP sounds grosser for those of you just joining the show. According to news reports available at the time, money also has poured in from other Republican political committees that have chosen the Trump Hotel as a venue for receptions. The hotel has hosted events for Representative Dana Rohrabacher. Wow, the one person that Kevin McCarthy, besides Trump, was willing to admit he thought was in the pay of Vladimir Putin. What do you know? What a strange thing, a strange coincidence to have that happen. But there are more. Of course, Bill Schuster, a Republican of Pennsylvania, and 9 other Republican members of Congress, according to campaign spending disclosures. No one has, hold on a second. I got to stop the clock here for a minute and just say, by the way, to give you a parallel, I know you all recognize that this is wrong on its face, but just to give it some additional context, let's say you were coming at this from the position that it wasn't necessarily wrong, but if I could show you some parallel to something now pretty much universally recognized as wrong, you might tend to agree, or maybe you have somebody that you converse with regularly who might need that kind of nudge. Jack Abramoff, you remember the disgraced Republican lobbyist, who I'm sure is back in business now and doing quite well. We probably haven't checked in on him in a while. But Jack Abramoff used to use a similar vertical integration on a smaller scale to do things that everybody, I think, eventually came to the universal realization were wrong. That is, for instance, his scheme tended to be, he owned a private box at the Verizon Center and one at the Redskins, or as I like to call them, the Breadsticks, because we shouldn't use the racist name of the stupid football team. And by the way, despite the fact that I've lived in Washington, D.C. area for 20 plus years, I've never liked the Breadsticks. Can't stand it. Well, I'm a Giants fan, so there was no chance I was ever going to become that, and I wouldn't let my children grow up that way either. But anyway, at their FedEx Field that they built, their latest stadium, Abramoff owned a box there, and he owned one at the Verizon Center, which is the venue for the Washington Wizards and the Washington Capitals, the indoor sports arena, plus, of course, concerts and all that stuff. You buy a box like that, write it off as a business expense, of course, and he used to lease it out allegedly lease it out to Republican members of Congress to have private, intimate fundraisers there. You invite 20, 30, 50 of your most intimate friends who have lots of money to come to an event there. Then you get tickets to every event that's there. So, even if it's whatever, I don't know, back in the day, a Britney Spears concert, you don't want to go, but the lobbyists have kids who want to go, and you look like a big shot to your kids. Jack Abramoff does you the favor, whatever, a member of Congress. But the business plan of it was, okay, you can all come to a country music concert would be the sort of thing that Republican members of Congress would enjoy bringing people for a fundraiser. And you get to, you rent the box and you send out your invitation list, but you got to cater the thing. There's got to be food and drink. Luckily, Jack Abramoff owns a restaurant that he can actually cater your events with. You could, of course, hire the contractors who work through the Verizon Center, but screw that. Those people are all Democrats. So I'm going to bring an outside food and drink from Jack Abramoff's restaurant and feed these guys with. And it would make a great business model for a captive audience if you were interested in getting paid for those things. But what made it more interesting, it was probably wrong on its face, but still possibly permissible depending on how much they charged for Abramoff to lease out that space to Republican members of Congress, even though he was lobbying them, and let them use it for a fundraiser and then charge them money to cater the event too. And you could make money on the lease of the box and the catering. But more to Abramoff's interest, it turns out, was getting paid by lobbying clients to get votes in Congress for their priorities. And the way he got those votes in many cases was to lease out the box and to agree to cater the parties for fundraisers for these Republican members of Congress, and then forget to bill them for the use of the box or the catering that they used to feed the people at the party in the box. And what a great favor that would be to Republicans. And they make that much more money on their fundraiser if they don't have to pay for any of the venue or food used at the fundraiser. And what a fantastic benefit that is to me. And what would you like from me in terms of votes, Jack? And that's the way his scam worked, or at least partially worked. And now we have it writ even larger with the Trump Hotel. That's where we are. That's why it's of interest that the hotel hosts events for members of Congress. Now, we may end up having a slightly different problem with this one. I don't know that Donald Trump will forget to bill anyone for these events. He might, and if he does, that's a particular kind of problem. And if he doesn't, it's a different particular kind of a problem, an emoluments problem. They got him coming or going, which is why you're not supposed to have business interests on the outside when you're president of the United States. But we already flushed that down the toilet before we even inaugurated him. Back to the article. No one has yet calculated how much taxpayer money is being spent at the hotel. A Texas newspaper is seeking records of state expenditures at the hotel. In Maine, the Portland Press-Herald dug into Republican Governor Paul LePage's spending at the hotel when in Washington for White House meetings. LePage's spokesman defended the expenditures, telling the newspaper that the governor was meeting with federal officials in an effort to benefit the Maine people, or as others might say it, the people of Maine. Businesses from foreign customers is brisk, the hotel says, but as an ethical precaution, it says it does not market directly to foreign embassies. Under an agreement signed by Trump, the hotel has promised to donate any profits made from foreign governments to the U.S. Treasury, an obscure constitutional provision known as the Emoluments Clause. It's not obscure anymore. It's obscure. It had been obscure because no president had ever dared flirt with it in this way before, ever, in 200 plus years. So it became obscure, but now we know it. That clause prohibits the president from profiting from foreign governments without specific approval from Congress. Full stop for just a moment, because Armando just fell out of his chair. There are multiple references to emoluments in the Constitution. There is also a domestic emoluments clause that absolutely positively should have been mentioned in this article, and to this point has not. It is directly relevant to the LePage story, which he did report. I can't believe it's not in here. Maybe it appears later in the article. This is where it belongs. Continuing now with the article that has this giant hole in it, but groups with foreign interests have found that the location helps attract Washington's star power. In May, a pair of business groups promoting U.S.-Turkish relations, Turkey is a red flag here, And they do have a red flag, by the way, don't they? Yes. Anyway, U.S.-Turkish relations staged their annual convention at the Trump Hotel during a tense moment between the countries. The Turkish ambassador was there, and a high-ranking State Department official offered his thoughts on a violent protest that led to arrests at the ambassador's residence in Washington. Trump confidant Newt Gingrich stressed the importance of smooth relations in a keynote luncheon speech. At the convention's end, 190 guests feasted on a 3-course dinner at $95 per person. It's not a bad price for a 3-course dinner at a fancy hotel, but okay. With the bill paid by the event sponsors, according to a billing record obtained by the Post. Breakfast, dinner, and drinks on May 23rd alone ran to more than $30,000, including a banquet event service charge of 24% and 8 gallons of Trump signature Segafredo Zanetti coffee, internal documents show. Very interesting. But of course, Turkey, red flag, paying Michael Flynn, the infamous spy, fired as National Security Director and National Security Advisor, what was it, 24 days into the Trump administration? All right, continuing with the article. A high-end renovation of the historic old post office pavilion, the 263-room hotel, has become a symbol of the tangled ethical questions posed by Trump's presidency. Do they even address the fact that this shouldn't have happened in the first place? They shouldn't have been able to retain ownership of the hotel because it's the old post office pavilion? Let's see. The Trump Organization, then headed by billionaire New York developer Donald Trump, obviously, leased the property from the General Services Administration in 2013 and pays the federal agency $250,000 in rent each month. Since Trump's election, his critics have charged that anyone seeking favor from the White House has an incentive to stay in posh rooms that can be booked on the internet for $400 per night or more. One of the Washington's most expensive hotels, Trump International, brought in $19.7 million between its opening last fall and mid-April, according to Trump's most recent financial disclosure. Some hotel industry experts say that number is higher than expected, and senior analyst Michael Belisario of Robert W. Baird and Company said, anecdotally, it's doing well because people are staying there when they come to visit the White House. Trump tried to address ethical concerns by turning over the hotel's management to his 2 eldest sons and vowing to take no hotel profits during his tenure, but he retained his ownership interest, allowing him to eventually profit from the holdings. In fact, he can profit right now because of the way his trust is built. The arrangement did little to quell controversy, because it didn't quell anything, controversy or reality. Early this year, lobbying reports revealed that some veterans groups had been brought in to lobby Congress against a law allowing victims of the September 11th attacks to sue Saudi Arabia. The veterans group ran up a $270,000 tab at the hotel, including about $190,000 for rooms, $78,000 for catering, and $1,600 for parking, the filing showed. The bill was ultimately paid by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, leading to criticism as Trump embarked 3 months later to Saudi Arabia on his first international trip. The White House did not respond to questions. The Saudi embassy did not respond to requests for comment. The Trump Hotel has faced lawsuits since its opening. The most recent ones filed by 2 state attorneys general, members of Congress, and competing Washington convention businesses, contends that Trump is violating the Emoluments Clause, which he is, because there's a domestic one. My gosh. There's 2 invitations to mention that now. Trump's donation to the U.S. Treasury is aimed for the end of the year, and Tang said the hotel keeps a separate ledger to record any payments from foreign governments. And by the way, anytime you open the door to a Trump organization keeping separate ledgers, hello, you don't watch any movies, I guess. The Untouchables, nothing. But Trump critics such as Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton of D.C., who worked with Ivanka Trump on the original development plans for the hotel, argue that the novel legal questions posed by the emoluments lawsuits will eventually force the president to give up ownership. That'll drag through the courts until he's not president anymore, and then it'll be mooted. But okay. I can't believe that there's any court that will say the Emoluments Clause does not apply here, notwithstanding that it has never been tried in court before, Norton said. For Trump supporters, the hotel offers a safe space in an overwhelmingly Democratic city. Ooh, safe spaces. Good play there. For Republican lobbyists, conservative groups, and foreign entities, including many that do not typically enjoy White House access, it has become a frequent stop. The hotel's visibility also has made it a central target for activists representing immigrants, climate science, and labor groups who aren't always successful on Capitol Hill, but can sometimes make the evening news protesting at the hotel. In May, Trump's son Eric and his wife Lara, who, by the way, has a new job broadcasting Trump propaganda TV on his Facebook page, you all heard that the other day, stopped by while in town for a golf tournament at Trump's Virginia course, which is 40 minutes away, by the way, and there's many hotels much, much closer, but they don't patronize those. Spicer, who promoted the hotel as absolutely stunning after Trump was elected, ate alone near the bar. Well, he's out now. So, lobbying groups and foreign entities held galas here in the 13,200 square foot presidential ballroom designed by daughter Ivanka to offer larger event space than any other luxury hotel in the city. The Benjamin Bar, named for Benjamin Franklin, sort of. It's named for the nickname for $100 bills. I think we all recognize that. Otherwise, it would be the Franklin Bar or the Benjamin Franklin Bar. But the Benjamin Bar is all about the Benjamins, if you will. I'm so white. Anyway, the Benjamin Bar served as a nightly resting spot for White House visitors and a green room for Trump surrogates on their way to or from media hits. Lewandowski, the former campaign strategist, rolled through once a week or more. On the day Robert S. Mueller III was appointed special counsel to investigate possible coordination between the Trump campaign and Russian officials, Lewandowski, shortly after denying on Tucker Carlson's Fox News show that he saw anyone on the campaign have conversations with the foreign government, showed up to pace the marble-floored lobby. Weeks later, he sat and had beers with New York Times Magazine reporter Mark Leibovich. Senator Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky, had dinner with his wife, David Clark, the Milwaukee sheriff, who was then reportedly under consideration for a Department of Homeland Security job, which I guess is open again, hung out at the bar in camo shorts, perfect for the distinguished job he was seeking. Dress for the job you want, man. That's what they say. Now, I don't think that they should always enforce that rule, but whatever. That's you guys are into that rule. The Trump family's event planner, Lynn Patton, now a senior official at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, remember her, posted a video online from the hotel lobby in which she and friends pitched Ivanka Trump's new book. By the way, here's a federal job. One Friday evening in May, a group of Russian clerics arrived in the long black flowing robes and beards of the Eastern Orthodox Church for closing ceremonies of the World Summit in Defense of Persecuted Christians, in partnership with the Reverend Franklin Graham and his evangelical organization, the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. More than 800 people from 130 countries and territories attended. I'm surprised that the Russian clerics weren't assaulted after being mistaken for Middle Easterners. But okay, good. I'm glad they weren't. I'm just surprised. A spokesman for Graham said the choice to use the Trump Hotel was based on space and availability. Yeah. He said Graham isn't aware of any facts that would give him concern at this point regarding Trump's continued property ownership. The Turkish event, May 21st to 23rd, was booked before the election, according to organizers, but came as the government of Turkey stepped up its presence in Washington, hiring a Florida-based Trump fundraiser, Brian Ballard, as a lobbyist with $1.5 million initial contract, according to public filings. Also, by the way, paying nearly $500,000 to the infamous spy Michael Flynn. But never mind that. This is why I read you the articles in their entirety. You never know what editorial comments are due and all these things. And it might be that the original authors wanted very badly to include that stuff. You never know what editors are doing to these pieces. But then again, you don't know what they're blind to either. In case you were wondering why I don't just hit the headlines, make a few comments, and move on. You never know what hidden gems there are in these things. The event was co-chaired by a group headed by K. Ekim Alptekin, founder of a company. Here we are. Yes, finally, it's getting mentioned. Founder of a company that paid retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn for lobbying work that may have benefited the Turkish government. Maybe. The former Trump National Security Advisor is under investigation by the Pentagon and congressional committees regarding his relationships with foreign governments. Alptekin surprised ballroom guests during the first morning session by directly addressing the hiring of Flynn's company to, quote, help me understand where the Turkish-American relationship is going and what the obstacles to the relationship are. They're NATO members. There's really not that much to discuss, but okay, fine. Good idea. An Italian medical foundation hosted cancer doctors from the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center and the University Medical Center in Hamburg from May 11th to 13th. The program omitted mention of Trump, listing the location as Congress Center, Old Post Office Building. Oh, that's interesting and clever. That's a good way of dealing with that. A spokesman for the German university said it played no role in selecting the location, and the foundation, Fondazione Internazionale Menarini, did not respond to a request for comment. That was a long way to go for a no response. The Penn Fed Foundation held its 800-person charity gala at the hotel to benefit veterans, and President Tamara Darvish said the hotel choice was not political. We are there to help veterans, she said. Consulting giant Deloitte did not respond to questions about its decision to use the hotel for a June 8th event that attracted hundreds of banking leaders as Congress discussed whether Dodd-Frank financial regulations should be rolled back. Much, much more to this story, of course, and maybe it is time for us to bail out of this one and move on to some other subjects as we head into our third and last station identification break. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Hey, hello, and welcome back then to our last segment of the Kagro in the Morning Show. Our breaks are done, I believe, and so it's the home stretch of the show. Everything appears to be functioning normally, and we can sum up. I used the breaks, as a matter of fact, to check up on the making sure of our timing here. We got a little bit of work to do, I think, to get these things right. Although every time I think that we've missed the mark, we get see, there it is again. Justice says, perfect. You're exactly on the mark. I think we've got this pretty much down, and we might be able to make this automatic and let Justice tend to his own morning routine. Certainly we can from this point on. It's a straight shot from here to the end of the show. We were just discussing how the Trump Hotel has rewritten the rules of business and politics in Washington, a Jonathan O'Connell piece in yesterday's Washington Post, suggested to us by listener Kate Sherrill via Twitter. Once again, those of you Twitter-savvy listeners can join in the direction of the program by sending us your suggestions, comments, etc. via Twitter and hashtagging it KITM so that we can get a good opportunity to get an eyeball on that one before the show is over. We were just at the conclusion of the article. I was wondering how long this one was going to go on, but and sometimes it does go on for some time. I have a hard time pulling away from these articles, even when I think we've already made the point, because you never know when the opportunity to make another observation that you wish was in the text of the article. That's what the show, essentially, for me anyway, is about. Those of you who might still be new listeners, if you're just joining us, for instance, in Rochester, New York area, listening on Rochester or Free Radio, you'll get the sense that this show's a little bit different from what you usually hear on the radio elsewhere. And yeah, we don't do the call-in thing quite as often. We're still working on the technology of getting that done. But you might wonder why we spend so long on single subjects and read all the way through these articles when the point is made very quickly. And it's as much about the things that you likely say to yourself, whether you're talking back to the television or talking out loud while you're reading the newspaper, finally being discussed out loud. And if there's something that we missed about it, bring it to our attention. I'm sure that there are things that we missed that are great observations that those of you at home would like to add. And whether we have phones available or not, we have other ways in to the show, including recording your own segment and emailing it to us. Once again, I'll give you that email address, my own email address. It's the Kagro in the Morning Show, and so you can find me at KagroX, K-A-G-R-O-X, at gmail.com. Pick up that smartphone, turn on the recorder, give us an earful, keep it clean enough for our friends in Radio Rochester land. Of course, we don't want to get anybody in trouble over this, and we can play it on the air and react to it. Whether it's agreement or criticism, we should be able to handle either one, and it would be fun to have that kind of interaction. It's a different way of interacting, but it's a different kind of radio show. So picking up where we left off about the Trump Hotel and the various emoluments clause challenges it poses, we have this conclusion. It's coming to an end. Meanwhile, while all this other stuff is going on, the ties between the hotel and the White House have only strengthened. First Lady Melania Trump chose the hotel's director of rooms as White House usher, adding to a former caddy, hotel spokeswoman, and bodyguard from Trump's business, who have all found positions in the White House. Trump has yet to name a new GSA administrator. Remember, the GSA, the General Services Administration, the gang that oversees the contract between the Trump Organization and the hotel. We don't have an administrator. They're gone. A new one who will oversee his company's lease still yet to be named. And congressional Democrats, led by Representative Peter DeFazio, a Democrat of Oregon, have accused the GSA of withholding documents about the Trump lease arrangements from the committee overseeing the agency. Anti-Trump protesters continue to use the venue to speak out on the president's policies. It's not unusual for the hotel to suspend service at its European-style sidewalk cafe and move guests inside. One evening, hotel staffers guided guests inside just in time to miss a man in a wheelchair rolling down the street out front, giving the hotel the middle finger as part of a demonstration for rights for the disabled. Oh my, delicate flowers that they are. It's such a symbol of Trump and his excesses, says Donna Norton of Moms Rising, a liberal network with more than 1 million members who led about 100 people on a march to the hotel in May. She said when her protest group arrived, the hotel staff was very polite in turning them away. I think they're getting used to it, she said. Lots of extra credits for contributions to the report. You can review them on your own as we include the links to all of the articles used, hopefully, in our afternoon roundups at Daily Kos. And you can find us in the Daily Kos radio section there. Scott Anderson, our able assistant in putting those summaries together. Saving me hours of time, by the way. Thanks again to Scott for that. And those of you interested in reading the articles for yourselves, putting your own critical eye on them, we'll thank him as well. Okay, so let's see. We have a couple other things we'd like to include here. One thing I want to at least acknowledge, one more article that came in that I don't think I can get to today because it's another expansive topic that's going to require a lot of discussion and a lot of interplay and a lot of time and sensitivity. But Jack Ox 48, who knows if I'm pronouncing the way you think your Twitter handle is read aloud, but thank you for sending me this one. Thank you for your comments as well. He says he appreciates our analyses. Please talk about this, and sends me this article and notes, I want Dems to get together, but this argument, it is a tough one. And I have some thoughts on it. Some of them will probably challenge your view of these things. But it's a huge and complex topic. Let me tell you what it is. We'll open up the article and at least note it. And even if we never get around to it, I'll make sure that we try and include it in the roundup today, so you can do your homework and we can read through it a lot quicker when we get around to it and get more onto the discussion. An article from Observer.com. DNC lawyers argue DNC has the right to pick candidates in back rooms. This is an old article, but it's an ongoing fight, and that's why it's here. And why we're still having the argument is it's such a touchy subject. It's not old, but it's from May 1st of this year, and poses a basic question of what are political parties, how are they constructed, and how ought they to be run, how can they legally be run, how have they been run traditionally versus how might we wish to see them run now or in the future. It's an expansive topic, but a good one. Certainly not out of bounds for our consideration here on the show. It's just a matter of, well, we're only on for so many hours a day. And if we had kicked off with this discussion, we could have spent the hour plus that was really necessary to get through it. But we can do that another day. We got a lot of time and a lot of vacation time coming up. Maybe it makes a good topic for one of the shows that we'll pre-tape for next week. Thank you for sending it along. I don't want you to think it's being ignored. All right. I did mention that there was a Russia angle story. We got a lot of Russia dots to add to our web out there, but this one is still pretty fresh and pretty recent. I wanted to bring it up. I mentioned yesterday that this was the case over the weekend, that the president had retweeted a comment, just your basic, hey, you're awesome kind of comment, and thanking the sender of the comment on Twitter for having sent it. It's just, it had something curious and wrong about it. And, we'll let the Washington Post sum it up. Abby Phillip writes on the curious case of Nicole Mincy, the Trump fan who may actually be a Russian bot. Now, the story, I think, really originally uncovered by a number of Twitter users who just have sharp eyes for these things, and a couple of other sources too. And those sources include a couple of people that I follow pretty closely on Twitter as well. And we'll see if they're mentioned in the story. And if not, we'll try and dig up credit that I think is due to them. But this story, now, like a lot of traditional media stories, when they write these things up, they are often reluctant to credit the work of people who originally did the digging and did the sleuthing if it was conducted on social media. And it's doubly so when they don't provide a real sounding name to be credited with. And it's ironic that that's still the case even in stories about Russian bots that are actually fake people, but that use real sounding names. The president of the United States is happy to retweet that person. And even, although this president will retweet anybody, even if they have a handle on Twitter that makes it obvious that they're a white supremacist. But it's interesting that this bias still exists. More on that perhaps in the future. Anyway, the curious case of Nicole Mincy, the Trump fan who may actually be a Russian bot, by Abby Phillip in the Washington Post. Early Saturday morning, President Trump tweeted his gratitude to a social media superfan, Nicole Mincy, magnifying her praise of him to his 35 million followers. Here's the problem. There is no evidence that the Twitter feed belongs to someone named Nicole Mincy. And the account, according to experts, bears a lot of signs of a Russia-backed disinformation campaign. On Sunday, Twitter suspended the Mincy account, known as ProTrump45, after several other users revealed that it was probably a fake created to amplify pro-Trump content. The incident highlights Trump's penchant for off-the-cuff tweeting and the potential consequences for doing so now that he holds the nation's highest office. Even as the president has railed against multiple investigations into Russia's meddling in U.S. politics, he may have become Exhibit A of the foreign government's influence by elevating a suspected Russia-connected social media user, part of a sophisticated campaign to exacerbate disputes in the U.S. politics and gain the attention of the most powerful tweeter in the world. I'll pause here to note what exactly this is saying is essentially Trump spends all of his time when he talks about the Russia issue calling it a fake controversy, a fake issue, the fake Russia story. He tells all the crowds at all of his rallies, can you believe the time that these fake news organizations are spending on Russia? Totally made up story, right? Russian propaganda and interference in American politics is so fake, in fact, it turns out it's so fake that it even fools the President of the United States. I mean, think about what this says. It's the way they put it here. I mean, it's a fine turn of phrase, but I don't know if it puts fine enough point on this thing that even as the president has railed against multiple investigations into Russia's meddling in U.S. politics, he may have become Exhibit A in the foreign government's, the Russian government's influence by elevating a suspected Russia-connected social media user. In other words, the Russian propaganda is built in such a way that a less than brilliant person, perhaps, who also isn't willing to cast a critical eye on such things, would very easily be fooled. I mean, the brilliance, such as it is, of the Russian
propaganda campaign is that it is providing American partisans with material that looks like it comes from like-minded American partisans so that they can feel like they're not alone, that they're part of a larger movement, and they can share the observations made for them by the Russian government, but not handed over to them with a label that says product of Russia, but instead something that looks like a regular American Joe or Jane, sending along their personal thoughts. And gosh, isn't it nice that there's such synchronicity between us? But as we pointed out earlier in the show, there's a little too much synchronicity to this, including, for instance, the top trending topic among Russian bots as soon as Trump began rage tweeting about Richard Blumenthal became Richard Blumenthal. They take their cues as best they can from American politics or their read on it among these Russian bots, and just try to propagate the same story and amplify it so that people who wouldn't necessarily be paying attention to exactly everything that the president is saying at any given moment, or might not even be watching Fox News, can still end up on the same page. And it ends up looking, for all intents and purposes, if you're analyzing what's being talked about on Twitter, like millions of Americans are buzzing about Richard Blumenthal. So that's where we are with this thing. The president doesn't even know whether it's a Russian bot or not, said Clint Watt, a former FBI agent and fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute, using the term for a fake Twitter account pretending to represent a real person, a bot, and created to influence public opinion or promote a particular agenda. And if you're not hip to the lingo, I guess it could be hard to follow, but a bot, just nothing but short for robot, an automated account. In other words, that there not only is no Nicole Mincy, but there isn't necessarily even a human being behind the bulk of the work that the Nicole Mincy Twitter account is doing. It is an automated program dressed up to look like a U.S. human female. And that's all there is to it. But the president doesn't know whether it's a bot or not. All he's interested in is there's a Twitter account that says I'm great. Of course, but he's given that speech before, right? But you're praising dictators. What am I going to do? Dictator says something nice about me. What am I going to do? Say no? Of course, I like to be. Everybody loves to be told nice things about themselves. Oh, not like that. But he doesn't have to know. He doesn't care if it's a Russian bot. It said something positive about him, so he retweeted it. The Russians know this. And if they, basically, at this point, they're probably waiting for the day when it becomes possible to simply write a tweet that says, President Donald Trump is awesome and should cede Alaska to Russia. And Trump will retweet it, and then he'll get on the air and say, I hate Alaska, we should get rid of it and give it back to the Russians. It only makes sense. And it might work. I mean, essentially, it feels like that's what they're just trying to get around to anyway. In the meantime, they settle for small bore victories like this one. But the point here is the president doesn't know, and he has no interest in finding out, and that's the real danger. He's using the world's most important platform to repeat Russian propaganda points because it starts out by saying Donald Trump is awesome. That's the problem with this whole thing. Plus, of course, what it may have done to the election, obviously. As a candidate, the article continues, Trump became known for amplifying tweets from accounts of dubious origin, including one under the name of White Genocide TM, like TM as in trademark. Now, I guess if you've got a guy who's running for president and he's willing to retweet the account White Genocide, it's pretty clear that he either has no idea what's going on or doesn't care that the account is called White Genocide. It said something nice about him. And again, the danger is sitting right there in front of us. If it says something nice or beneficial to him, he either doesn't notice or doesn't care once he does notice that it comes from White Genocide TM, which also means that if it says something nice about him, he will retweet it even if there's a hidden message that he doesn't understand and it's identified as having come from the Kremlin. It won't faze him. He either doesn't notice or if he's called out on it, says, what's wrong with that? They said something nice about me. Yes, but there was a hidden message in it that will collapse the United States somehow and cause a nuclear war. Yeah, but they said something nice first. That's all that matters to this idiot. As president, not much has changed. Trump still routinely hits the retweet button if a Twitter user echoes his criticism of his adversaries or showers him with praise, regardless of who that user is or what his or her motives may be. Aides and advisors have hinted that Trump has been urged to tone down his tweeting habits, but the president has shut down those conversations quickly, according to two people who have witnessed such exchanges. He also has on occasion followed bouts of public discourse about his Twitter feed with a rapid-fire tweet storm, perhaps an implicit signal that he has no intention of ceding control of his accounts to aides now that he is in the White House. Couldn't have been better illustrated than yesterday morning, of course. Right, just as soon as Monday rolled around and the, Kelly will keep him under control narrative had gelled, he went around, he intentionally blew it up. Trump's tweet storms of the past several days, for instance, and this would be before yesterday, have followed intense speculation that his new chief of staff, John F. Kelly, might try to exert greater control over the president's account. The message? That's probably not going to happen. Actually, I think it is reflective of yesterday morning. Now that I think back on the timing of this article, during his 6-month tenure, Trump's former chief of staff, Reince Priebus, was unable to do much to rein in Trump's social media rants. Lawyers have tried and failed to impress upon the president the risks of discussing the ongoing investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election and possible collusion by his campaign associates. Lawyers, by the way, have also tried and failed to impress on the president the risks of discussing ongoing litigation with respect to his executive orders, whether in the area of immigration or elsewhere. He has undone himself a number of times, most famously on his Muslim ban, which he keeps insisting is a Muslim ban, even as his lawyers are in court insisting it's not one. Just thought I'd add that. Kelly faces much the same challenge as Priebus. According to people who have spoken with him, he does not believe that he will be able to change Trump's social media behavior and believes that being seen as attempting to do so could pose risks, including damaging his relationship with the president. Now, how does that get reported in the Washington Post? And still there's this narrative out there that he's actually either had been successful in reining him in or was going to try and nail it down. I mean, that's the death knell right there, right? On Monday morning, marking Kelly's second week on the job, Trump blasted out 9 tweets, including ones renewing attacks on Senator Richard Blumenthal, the fake news media, the phony fake news polling, and the fake news Russian collusion story. And then, seconds later, or actually right before then, the day before, there is no Russian collusion story. It's just that all the Russian bots identified as actually originating in Russia are tweeting about nothing but Blumenthal all of a sudden. How that happens, no one knows, right? And the president himself ends up being fooled by his own stupid bots and the Russians' bots at that, and they're largely the same group. And that's ultimately, I think, if I could just predict for you where the Russian collusion investigations finally land, is that the big overlap is between Russian bots established and operated at the behest of either directly the Kremlin or the security services or some combination thereof, plus or minus every once in a while, the oligarchs of Russia who fund such operations, and the American oligarchs who fund such operations on our side through the Mercers and Cambridge Analytica. I think a lot of people are probably double dipping and getting paid both by Cambridge Analytica and the Russian government and operating the same set of bots, just leasing it to 2 different clients, sometimes with and sometimes without the knowledge of the other. Anyway, to wrap up on this article here, while Trump continues to dismiss the Russia investigation, bipartisan former national security officials and researchers say that coordinated state-backed efforts to spread disinformation during the 2016 campaign were very real. 19 to 20% of the messages in the month before the election were originated by bots, said Emilio Ferrara, a researcher at the University of Southern California who conducted research on the impact of bots in the 2016 election. About 400,000 accounts that posted tweets related to the political conversation, we believe, were bots. So in other words, about 20% of the political themed tweets in the month before the election were from accounts that aren't even attached to real natural persons. They are disguised to look like it, but all you have to do Essentially, if you're still catching up with the story, one person can use a computer to generate thousands and thousands and thousands of fake accounts that they control that are dressed up to look like individuals who simply of their own volition joined Twitter. You get pictures off of stock photography and make up a background that says you're Christian, make America great again, dad, husband, whatever. And you throw it all in there to look like a typical account, and then you program 100 of them, 1,000 of them to say either exactly the same thing or something close to the same thing, and then the other couple hundred of them to retweet the first couple hundred of them, and then the first couple hundred to retweet the retweeting of the second couple hundred, and all of a sudden you got one guy responsible for what looks like overwhelming popular opinion on Twitter. If anything, these accounts have found an even greater foothold since the election among Trump's most ardent supporters online. They themselves, those of them who really are natural persons, will just perpetuate the cycle by retweeting what they see being retweeted already. In the past week, a virtual army of accounts identified as having ties to a Russia-backed disinformation campaign targeting the U.S. political system zeroed in on efforts among Trump's supporters to attack his national security advisor, H.R. McMaster, over the firing of 2 Trump loyalists from the National Security Council, a tool created by a bipartisan group of national security experts and researchers to track Russian-backed propaganda accounts, found that the Fire McMaster hashtag became popular among these misinformation accounts at the same time that several influential pro-Trump users on Twitter adopted the anti-McMaster position. By Friday, the clamoring against McMaster had become so loud that Trump issued a public statement defending him. As a Republican, it raises questions for some on the right who obviously have a difference of opinion on someone like General McMaster, but the reality is there's a foreign power here trying to push an agenda, said Jamie Fly, a former advisor to Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, who helped create the Hamilton 68 project, which tracks the influence of Russian-backed propaganda online. Researchers say the fake accounts sometimes disseminate content from well-known Russian-backed sources, including Sputnik and RT. The content is then picked up by U.S. conservatives, or the fake accounts might amplify content created by far-right media outlets known for misinformation, including Gateway Pundit and InfoWars. Thank you for saying that they're known for misinformation. Fly said Trump's liberal use of Twitter, has only increased the return on investment for a foreign power such as Russia seeking to sow division within the U.S. political system. Accounts can use Trump's low bar for retweets to their advantage by creating large volumes of content in the hope that he might be drawn to some of it. His use of Twitter has elevated the platform. Fly said it's created a situation where it's probably even more useful to a foreign power like Russia to try to influence the debate on Twitter. In the case of the account that was the recipient of an emphatic thank you, Nicole, from Trump on Saturday, Twitter will not say exactly why it was suspended. Online sleuths have posted evidence that the account has changed names several times, including as recently as this weekend. Experts say accounts such as this one often disappear quickly once they're exposed or achieve their objective. No one named Nicole Mincy has stepped forward to say the account is hers. And those online sleuths, by the way, had a great record to post on these things, including the reverse identification through image searching on Google of the picture being used that was supposedly of Nicole Mincy. She is, in fact, a stock photography model that has been used in a number of campaigns, including a T-shirt manufacturer who basically puts out there this shot of her with a T-shirt that basically has superimposed on it via Photoshop your logo here. Get it? You're supposed to use it to put your logo on her T-shirt using Photoshop. And guess what? Same shot appears in her Twitter profile, except it's suddenly magically a pro-Trump T-shirt. It's a fake person. That's all there is to it. And Trump himself falls for it all the time. It's an amazing story, amazing sleuthing done online. Kudos to all of those who were involved in uncovering it, and we hope we can dig this story back up again and give you the proper credit. But we have to close things out and hand things over to the guys on the after show. That's the way it works here on Netroast Radio. We take turns. So coming up at 11 with Wink and Justice, the latest on stories we may have missed along the way, including a last-minute minor emergency has arisen. So guess what? The news is they'll have to preempt the after show and their interview with Chris Reeves, their regular guest this morning. They'll visit again on Thursday, so tune in again for that. Today, an interview from years ago by Hollywood maven J. Blair Brown. Interesting, and we'll tell you more about it coming up after this.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Hey, how do you like this one? It's an interview with J. Blair Brown with Justice's brother, Mike Putnam, who also happens to be in the television movie actor Jerome Hamilton, as they discuss Life Starts at 50. Did I mangle that message? It's interesting. Stay tuned. I swear you're really going to enjoy it. We'll see you tomorrow.